it's not going to let you, then that is okay. And I can still kind of show you from my side what Pear Deck looks like and what it is. So totally okay if you are not able to get in, but I am going to present it and then you will be able to see it via Pear Deck. I don't see any messages in the comments. Yes, okay, I'm so sorry, Julie. Okay, let's forget worrying about trying to get into the Pear Deck, but I am just gonna show you guys kind of like two things for one. So we're gonna see this building relationships virtually and what it would look like via being in a Pear Deck, okay? So typically if you make a Pear Deck, you're able to give students the link, and unfortunately, yeah, it's gonna be asking for a Microsoft email and probably, if somebody's in, not let you in. But you would click start class, and so this would bring up where you have your slides. And I just think that Pear Deck can be a really helpful tool to be interactive with your students. So my first slide is this reflect and prepare, kind of thinking about what are some connecting wins from virtual learning and what will be the most challenging in the future. I can see that some people have already responded to this via the Whova app. And so if you have not already done so, no worries. I would like to, since it's a small group, do a quick little check-in with everybody. And if you will just tell us your name and go ahead and tell us one of the connecting wins that you saw, whether it was in your own classroom. If you aren't a classroom teacher, what was something that you saw in someone else's classroom? Something that went well as far as connecting with students. So tell us your name and where you're from, like what your role is. And so like if I was going, I would say, my name is Leslie Caliz. I am a Spanish teacher at Hamilton Southeastern High School. A connecting win that I saw from virtual learning was recognizing my students' birthdays and seeing how much that really lit up their faces when it was their birthday and I said, Feliz cumpleaños, Mateo, or whoever it was. That was something that I did that I didn't realize until the end of the year, how much some of the students that were virtual were like, you know, this has really been a crummy situation, but I was so thankful that you recognized our birthdays, and at least, you know, if nothing else, we heard happy birthday from our Spanish class. So that would be one of my connecting wins. Julie, would you, no, sorry, Julie, you're our host. If you want to chime in, feel free, but we can start with Karen. Karen, can you tell us where you're from and what a connecting win was from virtual learning? Karen, can Karen hear us? Hi, Karen. If you're not able to speak, if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine too. If you want to put it in the Whova chat. Oh, okay. I see some things here. So Karen is from South Madison Community Schools. Amanda also chimed in with Amanda Coolhan, a consultant. I don't have a classroom or work in a school, but with my own kids, their teachers played really fun games when they were virtual, allowing for fun connections. Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Karen, do you have anything to share with us? And then Rosie, Jen, Jolene, if you guys want to go ahead and send it in the chat if that works best, or you can unmute. Totally up to you. And Julie is a school counselor. Her connecting win was Google Voice to text with students and parents. Much more responsive than phone calls. Yes, I imagine. That's awesome. Julie, are you able to see where the people who have responded, it looks like it's not letting me see their responses.
Okay, yeah. So we've got Karen Osborne is at Pendleton Heights High School in South Madison Community Schools. Rosie is a PE and health teacher. She said, my kids feel like they are getting personal attention through virtual learning. And Karen said, I had Google Meets to just chat so that kids weren't so alone.
Yes, I love that.
Yep.
Julie, are you able to see the answers from like the session poll?
Yes. Yep. Awesome. Oh, and we've also got Jennifer. Jen Lightcap works at the IDOE on the digital learning team as a family and course access specialist. Oh. So over on the polls, some connecting wins. Somebody said easy contact, not as much makeup work when absent, having students present from home. Some students were more successful when working virtually, and efficiency.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you for sharing your connecting wins. Now, if I think, Julie, thank you. I figured out how I can get to what will be most challenging. So what I see from our poll results for what will be the most challenging is being accommodating. So it's just, I think that when you have students with different needs, it is hard to accommodate all when you are kind of possibly living in a hybrid situation, when you have some students in person, some students online, and then also just finding out ways to accommodate when you have, even if they're all on one platform, but they all have different needs. Equity building, absolutely. New practices, attendance is definitely something that is challenging. Staff shortage, so you might have a lot of students assigned to you, and that is of course going to make it very difficult for you to connect with them if you have a lot of students to be connecting with. And changes, I 100% understand that. With the constant change, it's like once you get going with something that is working for you, it's like poof, it's going to change again. And so I definitely see where that is something that is going to be the most challenging in the future. So, okay, so that's kind of just to get us started thinking about some connecting wins, and then what are we kind of worrying about the most. If you have anything else to add to that, feel free to put in the chat. Oh, I see Jolene said a win, more regular connecting for PD. Our school's adopted temporary early release Wednesday. Okay, so a change in schedule might have been something that was a connecting win for many people. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so the next slide in this session, this kind of just tells us like what we are going to do today. So we're going to focus on the why. I think that if you chose this particular session to attend, we probably get the why, but I just, for people who may find themselves watching this later, I want to go over it briefly, discuss the how, and then hopefully leave with 3 to 5 new strategies that you can implement in whatever role it is that you find yourself in the fall. So the why, in my opinion, is sense of belonging. So for many schools, sense of belonging is low when you are in person, and that can even be more of a struggle when our learners are at home. Maybe they are isolated to their bedroom. Maybe they are not, like right now in our session, you know, we have just our screens with our names on there and we're not seeing people. And so not seeing those faces can really impact the sense of belonging. Whether your school is small or big, it can really be hard for students to feel connected when they are not in person. Me personally, doing a conference like this is hard for me because I feed off of the energy of others. And so not being in a room with a bunch of people that are ready to kind of share out and talk and see them, it's difficult. So I know as adults it can be difficult for us, and so I know that for students it is also difficult. Also, another reason would be support. Our students are facing things that we know nothing about, and I think connecting with them and letting them know that we care is a way that we are able to support them. Just making those first few touch points and allowing our students to realize, like, oh, okay, she wants to get to know me a little bit, or she cares about how I'm doing. Whether I say, like, how can I help you? How can I help you? They might not always want to ask for help if they don't feel like you are someone that they trust and know care about them. So I think that that is another big why. So another question that I have is, what works well in person that can easily be modified? So what is something, if you think back to the 2018-2019 school year, if I said, how do you connect with your students? How do you form connections and relationships with your students? What would be a number one thing? And would that be something that you could easily modify and still do even virtually? So I'm going to go into our session poll, and I have, how do you connect best with students in person? And so I'm going to read a few of these, and then if you have something that you want to put in the comments, if you did not already answer that poll, feel free. So someone said, ask them about their interests. I think that is something that most teachers do, most counselors do, most school personnel do, that can definitely be modified to work for virtual. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Personal conversation, that came up, with the Google Meet, of having just informal chats where you can get together with your students and maybe get to know them a little bit better. Asking and connecting to their interests. Yep. Relationships, conversation, one-on-one conversation. I really like that idea. Conversations, listen to them. Feedback that is not a grade and that is done regularly. I really like that. That when you are giving them feedback, and even if it doesn't have to do with a grade, but you're connecting with them. You're able to, it is a back and forth conversation, or if you're giving, they've given you a product or work and you give them feedback back, or even feedback that just has to do with, hey, like, you really participated well today, and I saw that you were really on fire with this lesson, and giving them that feedback that has nothing to do with anything that they turned in. So I like that. Something that in some of the classes that are up near me, something that they do a lot of in person, they might do like a student of the week, or in some of the world language classes, we do special person interviews. And there were some things that you would learn about students through that when we went virtual, teachers were like, well, I can't do that anymore. Sure, we can. We can find ways to learn about our students. And I know earlier someone said playing games. That is something that I don't have in this presentation very much, but I did an activity to learn about my students and just ask them to give us like 3 facts about them. And then we turned it into a Kahoot, or if you've ever heard of Bookit, or you could do it via like Quizlet Live, where then we were learning about our classmates through a game. And so I think that one thing I try to keep in mind is I like to connect with my students and I like to build those relationships, but I also know what it's like to be the student that's like, oh my gosh, this is awkward, or I don't want to be put on the spot. So allowing them to answer a few questions about themselves and their interests, and then us play it in an informal setting as far as like a game went. It wasn't me going around the whole Zoom squares and saying, okay, Karen, tell me 3 things about you. It was already done, and we just they were having fun with it, and they would get some wrong, and then they would learn by the end. And so I think that that is something else to kind of keep in mind, is not wanting to make a lot of our students uncomfortable, but knowing that, our goal is still trying to connect with them and get to know them a little bit. So I think that as far as some other things, anybody else have anything to add in the chat? I've got the chat open of what works well in person that you think you're really good at connecting with students, that you're like, you know what, I could do that virtually. I could do that via Zoom or via Microsoft Teams or via Google Meet. I'll give a minute for you if you would like, or if you're feeling comfortable and just want to speak, go for it. You can unmute yourself. So some other things that you have already been doing in person. And I think it's kind of hard for us to remember now that we've been probably in some sort of a virtual format to remember, okay, what did I do before that maybe I'm forgetting that I could add into my class? Okay, so far I'm not seeing any more comments, but feel free to add something in there if you wish. So some more hows. I put this together, and by no means is this an exhaustive list, but I put in some hows as to what can you do to really dive deeper into your connections with students. So the first one is a check-in. So at our school, we use something from the Yale Institute, from the ruler, and it is called the mood meter. And it happens to have some different quadrants, and it's kind of just asking students, like, how do you feel? So are you feeling, you know, really upbeat today and feeling good, or are you kind of like tired and not feeling so good? And it has different quadrants, and it has the higher up you go in the two quadrants at the top, that would be a lot of energy, and then the further down you go is low energy, and then the right side is more positive, more feelings that probably we think we tend to feel are easier to feel and feel good. And then the left side would be things that none of them are bad, but they're just more uncomfortable for many people. And so we have done some different check-ins where I'll ask students, like, plot yourself, like, tell me where you are. Are you feeling, you know, in the red, in the blue, the green, the yellow? There's 4 colors to the quadrants. And that is one way that could just be a quick thing to do at the beginning of class to kind of know what's going on in their world. You might have heard of temperature checks, where kind of based on the weather, like thinking like, are you feeling sunny today? Are you feeling cloudy today? Are you feeling kind of rainy? How are you feeling? And then in Pear Deck, which I'm going to show you one, it'll show kind of different things you can do as far as check-ins. One that I like also is to just ask them, like, tell me one word to describe you today. And that is something that can be powerful, as long as it's not like Monday morning where it's like tired, 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 and everybody is tired. But the different check-ins can definitely be helpful, and I think can really start to form the connection that, okay, she isn't just here to teach me Spanish from the time that bell rings or our class starts. She does care about me as a person, not just about me as a line in the grade book. Personalized emails, that's something that my students have asked, or when I've asked them, like, what worked well this year for feeling like we were connecting? And they said, when you would send personal emails. So sometimes when a student does one of those check-ins and tells me that they've had a rough week because of XYZ, I might follow that up with an email. And so something that I'm going to talk about on another slide, but something that I think is really, really important, is to be sure that you find some sort of method that works for you for tracking what they tell you. Sometimes I will get to know my students' interests, and then it's like, oh gosh, who told me that they love to fish? And it's like, I'll forget. So I jot it down. Or if I'm doing a Pear Deck, it archives their answer. Or if I am familiar with Zoom. And so I have my Zoom chats to save automatically. So if I ask my students a question as simple as, what'd you do this weekend? And it isn't something that I just went around to everyone. It was something that I had them respond to me in the chat. And then I might say, you know, I wouldn't say, oh, Karen went fishing and Amanda did this. Sometimes I'll just say, oh, somebody went fishing and oh, somebody, got a new dog. And then I'll ask, does anybody want to talk about it? And they might, say, I'm the one that got the new dog and here she is if they're showing from home. But something like that where you're able to remember easily and go back to it to maybe give yourself, like, hey, this Friday afternoon, I'm going to send 5 personal emails and put in there something that they said. And I think we all get busy. We all have a lot of stuff on our plate. And I think I had 160 students this past year. And so we're human. We're not going to remember it all. And that's okay. But if we can find a way to have that available for us. Another thing I mentioned, the birthday shout outs. I have students fill out a calendar at the beginning of the year. And that way, if they are not comfortable having their birthday celebrated for whatever reason that would be, they wouldn't put it on there. I don't pull the data. I have them put it, if we're in person, I send around a calendar. This year we did kind of like a Google doc that had the calendar on it, and that worked well. You could even just put the months and have them just type in the day and their name. But that's something that I think it is small but mighty when you can say, hey, happy birthday. Or before the weekend, of letting them know, hey, I see that so-and-so's having a birthday on Saturday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Discussion board, that was something that came up with some different interactive conversations that are just for fun, maybe not even content related, but having students get to know each other as well as their teacher. So you might just, whether I did like Would You Rather Wednesday, and mine did have to do with Spanish as far as the language that they were using to respond in, but it wasn't always related. Like I might just say, would you rather live in a big house with a terrible view or in a small house with a beautiful view? Something random. We weren't even in like a unit about houses, but it was something that got them talking, and then like they would talk about why. And it was just fun to kind of see some of their answers. And every once in a while we would do one where I'd say, you can do it in English, and it didn't have to be tied to only what they could say in Spanish. So they enjoyed that too. Mentioning the kind of Google Meets, the one-on-one, what some of you said in your how. So informal office hours, just having time to socialize, get to know classmates or the teacher. So anyone that wants to hop on at this particular time, maybe if they are working on something, you have that time set aside anyway to go over questions. But then while they're there, kind of check in with them and see what's going on in their world. Number 5, know the details. This is what a lot of you were saying, finding out their interests, asking those personal questions, finding out maybe about what it's like for them at home. Like, do they have siblings? Finding out where they work, finding out what they like to do for fun. A question that I like to ask them is, what brings them joy? To know kind of like what is something that it makes them feel good when they get to go do X, Y, Z. So I think that just knowing those details and asking them and taking interest in it, and maybe then you find things that you have in common that you're able to relate with them on. I have also done where I might ask them a personal question, like on a Google form, on a test or a quiz, where the last question is just something about, what was the best part of your week? Or if it's kind of near the end of the year, what are you most looking forward to about summer? Or if it's just about a random weekend, what is something that you hope you get to do this weekend? And kind of learn. And I always have students who will give me very broad answers and not go deep. And that's okay. But then you also have students that will just tell you everything. And then some in the middle. And I think that it's just nice to give them the opportunity, that outlet. I think it's interesting how I've asked students before, especially with virtual learning, and I've had some students tell me that they've gone through their entire day and no one asked them how they were doing. No one asked them personally about anything. And so I think that the more we can try to do that and know that, yes, it takes time, but that I think it makes the other stuff that we are trying to do that much richer when they know that you do care about them, and it makes them feel at ease, and it's a better learning environment for everyone when they feel welcome, they feel like they matter, and they know that it is worth your time to get to know them, and it is worth it to show that they aren't just a student in your class or whatever capacity you have them. And then finally, meet the teacher virtually. We did this for our parents, but also making that available for students before school starts to kind of let them know a little bit about you, whether it is optional or something that you record. Just having a time and a space for the students to kind of learn a little bit about you and see what you are like, and if they're able to join via an online platform, I think that's great. But even if it is as simple as doing like a Flipgrid and having your video and then asking them to respond back to you and kind of introduce themselves, I think can be powerful. So those are some of my hows that I found to work the best this past school year. Just a little about how I was teaching this past school year. We started off 100% virtual, and then we went into a hybrid model, and then we went back 100% virtual, and then we went back to hybrid. And during most of that hybrid, it was kind of like alpha split, different days. And then it wasn't until, gosh, speaking of changes, it's hard for me to even remember it all, but I believe it wasn't until after spring break, maybe right before spring break, that they were allowed to come regardless of what alphabet like split they were in. Like they could come every day, but we were on block scheduling, and that kind of changed some things. But these are, I think, the things that I found to be the most helpful. And I am not happy with myself with not doing a check-in with you guys at the beginning. I'm so nervous and so like, oh my gosh, is everything going to work, that I wish I had done one, but we're going to have a chance to do one in a minute. I went ahead and asked students too, like, what did you find most helpful? If you can think of a teacher that you felt really connected to, what was it? And so the things that they said they found most helpful were the Zoom chats, not necessarily related to school, but just to catch up, maybe to talk about what's going on in their lives. I mentioned this already, but just showing you that students really care about it too, would be personalized messages. So even I would do sometimes like, I would want to reach out to maybe 15 students who hadn't turned something in, or who I noticed had been really not real keen on participating. And so I would maybe craft some sort of an email that would be similar for all of them, but I was sending it to them individually and at least putting some personalized stuff in there at the beginning of like, hey, I've noticed that, you seem to be really tired when you come to my class because everything's going on. I'm worried because I don't feel like you're participating a whole lot. And I just want to make sure that you aren't falling behind and there isn't something that I can help you with. And then maybe the other person is really involved in sports. And I might ask them, like, I know that you're in season right now and it's really busy, but what sort of plan do you have in mind that I can possibly help you with to get some of this work done that you are falling behind in? Something like that, where it's like the message is the same for all 15 of like, what can we do to help you get through this, but finding a way to connect with them and customize that communication so that it's not just, oh, she sent a mass email today to everybody that hadn't turned in this project, that it shows that, you know, you took the time to kind of reach out to them. And then another thing that students said that something that I definitely feel like I have some room to work on is how I can get students to connect with each other. I think that I am good at getting them to connect with me. And the byproduct of that is often some connection with the class, like a little family. But some students were mentioning that collaboration is what they found to be helpful, which I totally get. If you are at home and you are not going into school, group projects or things where like you allow them to work with a partner during class. Now, I know that if you're anything like me, we saw where breakout rooms sometimes would just fall flat. So I definitely would see where this may not work for everyone. But I do think that even if it's like some sort of like peer editing or having them to kind of like think, pair, share, where they kind of all do the work, but then get together and kind of talk about it and what do they think the best answer is or what have you. I think that forcing the collaboration, while for some people they don't like it, others they do. And so I think that it's important to kind of find a balance of all the different things that might make a student feel connected and see how you're able to work those in throughout the course of your class, where everyone has a little bit of something that they, you know, one person may not like a particular thing or may not feel very connected through one thing, but they find something else is useful. So that was from student feedback of what they found most helpful. And then the kind of final thoughts, this is a quote that was said at the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year, so last August. And I think that it's just something that is important for all of us to keep in mind, as we know that all the changes that we endured, all of the interruptions and disruptions to learning, that while that matters, the beginning of the year, setting that tone as far as, you know, I'm here to teach you and to meet you where you are and to nurture community and build those relationships versus, oh my goodness, we have a lot of catching up to do because you guys have lost out on so much learning. That I think we know and they know that they've lost out and missed some things and had some things, you know, scaled back and not the full learning. But then I also think that, you know, we were living in a pandemic and we were all doing the best we could, and that it's also not doing them any good for us to only focus on that versus like celebrating what they were able to accomplish and what we were able to accomplish, and really kind of finding those social emotional connections that then will build upon the academic or the academic content will build upon those. So I just really liked that quote and thinking how impactful that is for any person in education. This slide is going back to that being intentional and knowing that it really matters and our students notice it. And this is where I wanted to remind myself, if I hadn't already, to tell you of finding a method that works for you of tracking or recording of what your students, whether it's like on a seating chart that you jot it down, or you're saving it in that Zoom chat, or you're doing a Google form that you can print off, of having something that you are able to see and refer back to often, whether it be about one of their hobbies, whether it be something that they're struggling with, whether it be, you know, the death of a family member or that they're having an upcoming surgery. I just think that it can be really helpful to have that on record somewhere instead of having to rely on our brain to remember it all. The other thing is, as far as being intentional goes, that I would like to touch on is, especially with your own students, if you have a group of them virtual, maybe not every day, but I think it's really important to, even if it's something as small as asking them like, what are you looking forward to about this weekend, of having them all talk, or send it in the chat if that is what you are most comfortable with, but having some sort of a touch point with each student is really, really beneficial. I noticed even with taking attendance, when I had 15 on Zoom and 14 or maybe even 10 sometimes in the room, and then it's like in the room, like I'm staring at them for 75 minutes. So if you ask me, was so-and-so here? Of course I knew it because they were in their seat and I was looking at them. Zoom, if I am presenting something that day and I'm kind of going back and forth with the chat, if I did not directly talk to each one of them, sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, were they there? And like, that's terrible. And I hate to admit that, but it's true. And even if it's something as small as not making them talk, but as far as when they come into the Zoom, you're saying, hi, Julie, thanks for joining us. Hey, Karen, great to see you, welcome. If you're saying their name and welcoming them into the Zoom, I think that it's powerful of them hearing you say their name, saying welcome. I would have students join late, and sometimes like I didn't want to call them out for being late, but I might say like, in the chat, I might say like, hey, like glad you're here, and here's the link, or here's what you've missed. And I think that just knowing that, okay, I'm not just a random, like probably how you're feeling right now with me just talking at you, versus if I had welcomed you all in and said your names and then asked you a check-in question. But yeah, just being intentional, knowing that it matters, that is a way to foster those relationships and create community. This is something that hopefully you have access to the PDF. This is something that I used from the distance learning playbook. And so it just kind of goes through relationships of how you're building those. It has where you can ask yourself, like, how will you call on students? How will you notice who hasn't participated so you can re-engage them? I think there's a lot of good questions there. And then also over here, some different bullet points. So something to a resource that if you would like to look more into at your own or on your own time, I think there's some beneficial things there. And then this is what if I had been thinking about the Pear Deck, of how I could have turned something off and made it where you could join it without an email address, but I am so sorry. But the check-ins and just interactive lessons. So this is something that one of the check-ins I like to do is a rock and a Ruby. And if you were a student in I think Julie was able to get in. So maybe Julie can model it for us, where she should be able to write a positive moment. So if you wanted to say like, hey, like it's Friday, thinking about this week, what was something that you would consider a Ruby that was a positive? And then thinking ahead to next week or maybe the weekend, what is something that is going to be a challenge? And you can also do the Ruby and Rock for, you could say, what was something challenging this week? And then what is something that you are looking forward to? So I'm going to show you, hopefully this works, where I can see the show responses. And I can see, oh, Julie might have not written. You should be able like to draw on there. Oh, I see, just awesome. So what this does is it's an interactive slide that allows your students to either draw or they can type. Like there's a text where you can like put the text in. Oh, a Ruby is just returned from Peru. That is awesome. I'm jealous. I want to go to Peru. So, but this is an example of something that you could do to just at the beginning of class or at the end of class, a quick little check-in. And thank you for doing that for us to show. Another one, this one is in Spanish because of one from my classes, but this allows them to like plot themselves whether they're feeling like really, really good, are they not feeling so good, but they're all right, or are they doing really poorly? And what you'll notice is you're able, when you click on like show responses, and here we have that she's right here in 3, but you notice like you don't see her name. So it's nice because I can click show responses or hide responses, and the students, if I'm screen sharing, can see, or if I'm in my room, they can see it, but they don't know who. And so I think that's nice. And if we had a lot of you on here, I can do it with this overlaid layout where it would show us all of them at the same time. And so that is a really cool feature of Pear Deck as well. And then another one that I do sometimes is just with like emojis of how do you feel today and why. And so they can come over here and they can circle, and then they come over here and they can get the text and type out why. If I had been doing this, if we didn't have Whova and I wanted to ask for that very first slide that was asking like a connecting win, I can also do a feature where it's just you typing, like there's no drawing, it's just words that you would be typing. And so that is a useful tool as well. But I like Pear Deck for the interactive parts of it that go not only with the social emotional learning piece, but also with the interactive interface of it in general when you're doing a lesson. Like you can put little like questions in here that you can put true, false. And I think that it helps them to feel engaged, to feel like they are doing something, not just listening to you talk. So that is kind of my presentation, and I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions, and would love to hear from you if you want to speak out loud, or if you want to put it in the chat, whatever you wish. I also would, if you don't want to, if you don't have any questions, I would love for, if you're comfortable in the chat, to put a rock and a Ruby. Check in with us. Tell us maybe a rock and a Ruby from this week, or what is a Ruby, a positive from attending the conference? What is a challenge going forward in your career, in your school year, if you wish? Oh, very cool. Jolene said, I hope teachers continue to use Pear Deck outside of e-learning. It's wonderful. It sure is. And if anybody is ever interested in learning more about Pear Deck but has not attended any sort of a session and they want to reach out to me, I would be more than happy to go over Pear Deck with anyone. I'm not an official Pear Deck person, but I would love it. Karen said, in world language class, I often talk about weekend plans with the future tense or what they did. Can do this virtually too. Yes, I love how much we are able to tie in with the weekend of getting to know them, because you're going to find out things about them based on what they tell you they are getting ready to do or what they did. So my Friday and Mondays always have weekend chat type things. We sang the birthday song in German on their birthdays on Google Meet. Hilarious. Oh, that's fun. Jolene asked, do you use the check-ins in person as well? Yes. So typically I do Pear Deck for all of my students. So the kids in the room are also logged in, so they're able to respond on there. Or if I do a day, I'll sometimes do it without anything with technology and just say, hey, I want you to go around the room and tell me a highlight of your week. And we will have the Zoom students do it first, and then I'll have the in-person students do it as well. And I will, you know, if Sarah's clear in the back, I will listen to her, and then I'll tell the class like, oh, Sarah just got a new puppy. And I don't know if you heard that, but Thomas was really excited because he got an A on his math test. Or, you know, John was really excited because they won sectionals in lacrosse. We had a stellar lacrosse team this year. So yes, I definitely do the check-ins in person as well. Great advice on tracking it. We can do this with our SIS and our LMS learning management. Awesome. And I've tried, ooh, nice. I've tried to sell this idea. And yes, I love the mental, I do enjoy what I do with our mental health club. It is called Bring Change to Mind. And we have a lot of fun with that. And what I'm trying to constantly do is find the things that we do in our club and bring that to my students as well and other teachers in creating connections with them too. So awesome. Any other questions? Oh, here we got, ooh, someone did their rock and Ruby. Yes. Okay, my chat feature wasn't like refreshing, but it is now. So Ruby would be the conference today. A rock, the home internet is down. Oh no, that's frustrating. I am thinking of you, and especially if you have lots of work to do from home, that is not good. I use Pear Deck a lot, but sometimes all the tech bogs down, so I just have to do things the old-fashioned way. Totally fine. I think our students appreciate that too. The days where it's like, you know what, this isn't working, and that's okay. We can do it a different way. That's awesome. Ruby, loving all the sessions today. A rock, my kids are home, so juggling their needs today has been challenging. Absolutely, Amanda. I have not been able to attend many sessions today because of my juggling my children, and so I had to get them. I knew that it would be bad news if I had them here while I was trying to present. That would be interesting. So I'm glad that they're recording all of this, and so if there's anything that you missed in with juggling the children and their needs, that you will be able to refer back to it. So that's great. Thank you guys for I have never done a conference like this alone, nor have I ever done it via a virtual setting. So this was awesome. You guys are my Ruby. We are small but mighty, and I think that it went as well as I could expect. So thank you so much for attending. Julie, what else do we need to do?
Nothing else, but just join me in thanking Leslie for a great session. I think we're all feeling extra energized and like we've all got a little extra Ruby in our day. So, and as you are leaving, I will remind you again to fill out that session feedback form to give us your feedback and opinion about the session and help us to learn and grow as well. So thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great Ruby of a day.
Thanks, Leslie. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Julie, I totally did not even think about the fact that my Pear Deck was going to ask for, but it's okay.